Hello, everybody. This is a Dapper Pigeon or Evan here. Um, had the idea to start hopefully a new video series where I can just kind of talk about my thoughts about different things, whether it be maybe a deck that's on my mind a lot, something that happens in tournaments that's worth mentioning, deck tech, anything. Gonna try to make this a regularly set of videos. So we'll see how everything goes. Today, I kind of got inspired by doing a video with my local Sean um, about my cabbage merchant run. So I kind of wanted to break down the deck a little bit more and just kind of talk about some of the pieces, why I run them, maybe things I'm testing out, things I'm wondering how they're going to play, stuff like that. I do want to make it clear I'm not the best cabbage merchant player in the world. I'm gonna miss some things. I might say something wrong. I'm sure I did in the video with Sean too, where I probably skipped over certain pieces or didn't say certain things because of everything going on. Just a lot that we need to talk about. So, quick, brief history. My friends joked with me that I should build this deck a long time ago, like 10 or 11 months ago. I put together a list. It was just a general idea of what I thought would work at the time, and it got kind of thrown to the wayside because I brew a ton. Then I saw Sylvie played this deck, and I believe their name had something to do with like, what if he was the foot, or what if he made foot tokens, something like that. But it was a very cool idea to me. And when I looked through the list, I saw a bunch of cards I didn't really think of and a lot of ideas that either at the time of me brewing it didn't exist or just didn't think of it. So we'll kind of run through this. I'll talk about some games I've had, some situations with the cards that matter. So first off, the deck is built around the Cabbage Merchant. The Cabbage Merchant is 2 colorless, 1 green for a human citizen that says, whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, create a food token. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, sacrifice a food token. You could tap 2 untapped foods you control to add 1 mana of any color. So the general idea is to get Cabbage Merchant out as soon as possible. Turn 1 or turn 2, have your commander out so you can start creating foods. Then you're going to turn the foods into mana and put that into pieces that you can leverage into either advantage engines or things that you could use to push for wins. So that's the general idea. Um, and I'll kind of go through generally some of the cards that are meaningful in each of the sections, try to give some examples. So when you're playing this deck and you're mulliganing hands, the first thing you want, turn 2 Cabbage Merchant, or turn 1 if you can get that. And then your next goal is to get down arguably the most important card for the deck, Academy Manufacturer. This is 3 colorless for an assembly worker. It says if you would create a clue, food, or treasure, instead create one of each. So with the Cabbage Merchant and Academy Manufacturer out, every time a non-creature spell is cast, you'll get 1 food, 1 clue, and 1 treasure. This can easily lead to you having an insane amount of value right out the gate. It's basically our Ristic study, is what we joke about. Um, so Academy Manufacturer is the most important piece in the entire deck, right besides the commander, obviously. Um, so we're looking at having an Academy Manufacturer out, cloning Academy Manufacturer, having 2 Academy Manufacturers, 3, 4, stuff like that. When you start to have multiple Academy Manufacturers, you start to have exponentially more mana and tokens based on the power of 3. So the math starts to get a little complicated. But essentially, if you have 2 or 3 Academy Manufacturers, every time a spell is getting cast, you are gaining way more advantage than the table will ever be able to keep up with. And it makes it very hard to lose. Um, Allosaurus Shepherd is in the deck, makes green spells you control can't be countered. Just very nice at helping us get some pieces out, stuff like that. Walking Ballista is one of the win cons for the deck. You can create infinite mana, which I will explain later, and pump it into Walking Ballista to destroy the table. We have multiple flash enablers because this deck is not looking to push on your turn. So this is kind of a common win line for me. The last tournament, which is listed up here, I played a better place. I placed fifth out of 78. Every win I had was with Walking Ballista at the end. It's not the way you have to win, but it just happened to be the easiest way for me to say, I have this much mana, I have deck in hand, I play this. Birds of Paradise is a mana dork. Chancellor of the Tangle. It is a pregame. You may reveal this if you do your first main phase, you get a green. So this is just a way to help get out turn one Cabbage Merchant, or maybe just get out a dork so that you could play Cabbage Merchant turn two. Chrome Dome is one of the cards, like I was talking about, that when I first made the deck, this card did not exist. Now it does, and it's really broken here. So it's 2 mana for a Robot Ninja. Other artifact creatures you control get +1/+0, which is 100% irrelevant. But pay 5, create a token that's a copy of another target artifact you control. That token gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So the big thing that you could do with this, there's a lot of options that will come up, and I'll try to hit on some of them. But the big thing is you can pay 5 mana to create an Academy Manufactor. It is a token entering, so if you have Peregrine Tookout, you will create a food off of that token being created, which will be multiplicative to the power of 3. So if you have the ability to, like, if you have like 20 mana and you have Took an Academy Manufacturer and Chrome Dome out, you can pay 5 to create a token copy of it, which will trigger Took, which will trigger the Academy Manufacturers. And then if you do it again and again, you will start to create more mana. So that actually can just lead to you having infinite mana. The good thing is also, because we're trying to win at instant speed, this is just a very good reactive piece. If someone goes to remove your Cabbage Manufacturer with a spell, with the Cabbage Merchant trigger, you can create a copy of it 2 or 3 times, and that'll give you like 15, 18 treasures, something like that, when you do the math, which then obviously you could put right into cracking clues or casting more spells from your hand. Oftentimes it just leads to a win. This is one of the cards from TMNT that came out recently, and it completely made this deck a lot better, which it already had a lot of good tools working for it, but Chrome Dome was a pretty insane print for the deck. Copper Gnomes is just a pay 4 mana, sacrifice it, put an artifact from your hand into play. Being able to get around using the stack is very, very strong. Delayed Halfling is pretty straightforward. Disciple of Freyalise is basically a forest that has another option if you want to, but I've never used the front side. We know Elvish Spirit Guide is. I am not on Beast Within in my deck, but you can do Beast Within endurance loops with Green Sun Zenith and stuff like that. I'm choosing not to do any of that. I still do run Green Sun Zenith, but I am more or less just running endurance as a way to either put my graveyard back in so I can redraw all the cards, or to snipe somebody's graveyard with breach shenanigans going on. The deck is, as you'll see, very respectful and very responsible of a deck, playing stacks pieces, playing some interactions, stuff like that, and then flash enablers to win an instant speed. Formidable Speaker. When it enters, you discard a card. You can search for a creature card, reveal it, put it in your hand. Pretty straightforward. Mana Dork. Gilded Goose is a great mana dork for our deck, and it is also importantly a way to create a food, because it has the ability 1 colorless, 1 green, tap it, create a food token. People don't often pay attention to that part of it because in most situations it's not super relevant. But when you have multiple Academy Manufacturers out and Peregrine Took, there are situations where if someone goes to respawn in a tight situation, you can create a food which will create you multiple foods, multiple treasures, multiple clues, which will allow you to just kind of respond at instant speed, which is very strong. Haywire Might is 1 green, sacrifice, exile target non-creature artifact or non-creature enchantment. Just an incredibly strong piece to have. Again, the deck is pretty respectful of other people's situations because we are trying to have the Academy Manufacturer out, have the Cabbage Merchant out, and just chill for as long as we can. Jaheira is 2 colorless, 1 green. Human, elf, druid tokens you control have tap at a green. So this is going to turn your foods, clues, and treasures all into mana rocks, which is pretty insane. Kadama, the East Tree, is a card I am testing in the deck. 4 colorless, 2 green, spirit, reach 6/6. Whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana cost from your hand onto the battlefield. So as I said with the Copper Gnomes, being able to get around using the stack is incredibly strong. The idea with this is when I'm set up and I'm in the push mode, I'm able to get this onto the battlefield by using something like Savage Summonings or having Quarry out or even just playing it and passing. And then every time somebody casts a spell, I'm able to trigger Cabbage Merchant and put stuff into play. And if I have Flash Enablers, I'm able to put something into play and then immediately follow it up with something else. In a lot of situations, that thing I follow up with could be something like Chrome Dome that I want to go infinite with, but I don't want you to counter. Or it could be stacks pieces, different things. It could be lands that do something on ETB, stuff like that. So that's kind of my idea with it. Kuldotha Forgemaster is 5 colorless for an artifact creature construct 3/5 that says sacrifice 3 artifacts, search your library for an artifact, put it onto the battlefield, shuffle your library. So the big piece with this is Clock of Omens. You're able to use Kuldotha Forgemaster and Clock of Omens to basically search out multiple pieces. You can get Transmutation Font, which I will show later, and you're able to create infinite mana, infinite searches off of that, easily win the game. Urza's Liberator and Cicada are both ways to flash out colorless spells, essentially. Both of them also having flash, so this is a very key piece. I'm building up mana with Cabbage Merchant. I have Academy Manufacturer out. I'm not doing anything that's really scary, but I'm creating stuff. So I'm able to deflect away the attention because I have 2 cards in hand. What am I doing? Next thing you know, I draw a couple cards. I play this. I can storm off at instant speed and win. That's the idea behind those. Llanowar Elves is a dork. Peregrine Took is also one of the most important cards in the deck. 2 colorless, 1 green. Halfling Citizen 2/3. It says whenever 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, you create that plus an additional food. And then it has sacrifice 3 foods, draw a card. So the bottom ability goes infinite with Nuka-Cola Vending Machine that creates tapped treasures when you sacrifice foods. And when you create those tapped treasures, they're individually created, which will individually create you 3 more foods. So you're able to do that to draw your entire deck. It also is a way that every time somebody casts a spell with Cabbage Merchant, you're creating 2 foods. If Academy Manufacturer's out, now you're creating 2 of each, which is kind of how you could see this deck get snowbally and just out of hand. Speaking of ways to get it out of hand, Sereth Steelseeker is 1 and a green, human artificer scout for a 1/2. It says whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may reveal it and put it in your hand. If you don't put that card into your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. So there's a lot of different important pieces to speak about with this card. So first off, if the card revealed as a land, you get to put it in your hand. So even just at a low level, this is just a way to put some lands into your hand, which is nice. The bigger piece of it is that you're able to bin cards. So you get the option of card selection, kind of digging through your deck, but we run Agatha's Soul Cauldron and Shifting Woodlands in the deck. So being able to bin a card like Kuldotha's Forgemaster can open up instant speed win lines just going off of this card. The other thing is that if you have Academy Manufacturer, Took Out, stuff like that, and you're building up the engines, you're able to stack the triggers of Steelseeker, which I did in my last tournament, where I would get 6 triggers every time that it would happen. I would look at the top card individually 6 times. If the card on top is something I want, I'm able to crack a clue to draw that card and then continue going through the triggers. So you really, when you're set up, this is like one of the most important cards at kind of digging through your entire deck right there. It allowed me to basically just put something on the stack. They give me triggers. I look at 6 cards, decide if I want any of them, put something else on the stack, 6 more triggers when they go to counter it, and it creates board states that are nearly impossible for them to win. Um, Obviously, there's ways for them to get around it, but when I'm just putting out win cons at instant speed, it's very hard to do anything about. So I already talked about Cicada. Soulish Jailer. Permanent cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield. Players can't cast non-creature spells from graveyard or exile. Just a good hate piece, especially in this meta. Sowing Microspawn is 3 colorless and a green Eldrazi Fungus Devoid. It has the ability for you to kick it to exile another land, which is surprisingly relevant in this deck because having 6 mana is not a tall ask at all. But you get to search your library for a land. I will hit over a couple of the lands that are important in this deck when we get down to that section, but I'll leave it alone for now. Sylvan Safekeeper's Protection. Wandering Archaic is a colorless spell that we can put out that is basically going to be pay 2 or I'm going to get exactly what you just did, which is terrifying for opponents because if you give me a Vamp Tutor or something like that, there's a chance I could just win off of that. Obviously, counter spells become pay an additional 2 or I counter your spell. Just a very good card in general. So that's basically most of the stuff with the creatures out of the way. Sorceries, there's really nothing to talk about here. Bridgework Battle is a removal piece that's a land on the backside. The other 4 are tutors, and the last one is a land that can also be looking at some cards. Nothing crazy about them. They're all, except for Bridgework. I mean, our goal with any of these is Academy Manufacturer or Peregrine Took. If I'm using these, obviously Green Sun can only get a green creature, so you can't get Academy Manufacturer with it, but those are the main goals. Instant Speed, again, these are pretty easy ones to go over. Archdruid's Charm can get you a creature or land. We're probably going for Academy Manufacturer, but there are lands worth grabbing. Autumn's Veil is protection. Court of Calling gets us Academy Manufacturer at instant speed. Crop Rotation goes and gets us a land. Defend the Rider is a protection spell. Force of Vigor's removal. Heroic Intervention's protection. This is Crozen Grip. I'll bring up the Oracle text. So it's split second, destroy target artifact or enchantment. I'm a big fan of running this spell because this is a big way to just stop something from happening, and it makes it very hard to interact with. Being able to split second destroy someone's Underworld Breach or Stax piece that's stopping me from doing something, it makes it very, very hard for opponents to do anything about. And if I just instantly destroy the Stax piece that's stopping me, I can win over top of whatever's going to happen after that. So I'm a big fan of this. Obviously, there's Nature's Claim and other things that cost less mana, but with this deck, we're trying to have more mana. And oftentimes, having something like this and threatening 2 of the opponents will make it so the original opponent won't target your commander. Because if this is the only piece of interaction I have to stop 2 of the players, and I promise to not use it on the player that wants to remove my Cabbage Merchant, then they know that I have to keep my commander around. Which oftentimes that's kind of how this deck plays out, is I'm trying to play politically, I'm trying to help the table, and by the time that I've built up enough resources and people get scared, it's too late. Legolas's Quick Reflexes is a protection spell. Noxious Revival puts a card from a graveyard on top of the owner's library. It could be very nice at getting us something back. I've done this just to put Academy Manufacturer back on top after it gets countered to replay it. Again, Academy Manufacturer, most important card. If you counter it, if you remove it, if you destroy it, I'm going to get it back. I need it. Royal Treatment gives a creature hexproof, so it's another protection spell. Notably, it gives a royal roll, which is going to make it so the creature has ward 1. So if I put this on my commander, it makes it very hard for a Bowmasters or other things to kill it because you have to pay additional mana afterwards that sometimes you don't have. Savage Summoning is a really awesome card if you guys have never played it. Highly recommend it. 1 green, it can't be countered. The next creature spell you control can be cast as though it had flash. And it can't be countered. So this is just a way to say I'm putting something on the stack whenever I want to, and it will resolve. And it enters with an additional 1/1 counter, which is pretty good for Agatha's Soul Cauldron, but in general, the uncounterable flash part is obviously more important. Second Harvest is the most broken card in this deck by far. 2 colorless, 2 green. For each token you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent. I had a tournament game recently where I made 513,000 foods, clues, and treasures, and then cast this after all those were made. Um, I asked them if they wanted to do the math on what it actually is, but told them it's basically irrelevant. It's infinite mana. 513,000 was already enough, but I wanted to do it just to see what it would actually come out to. In a lot of situations, this will just push everything way over the edge. I like to do this mostly as a way to start the stack battle if I need to start the stack battle, or if things are already looking dire, I'll kind of use this to start getting other people to cast spells. Um, it's a very strong spell most people don't want to resolve, which means that they're going to try to counter it and do other things, which is going to trigger my Cabbage Merchant, which is going to give me more mana, more clues, and you get the point. Shared summons lets us search for 2 creatures, put them into our hand. Oftentimes, Cabbage Manufacturer took, but obviously there's situations where maybe you'll want some of these other ones. Going and getting Cicada and Liberator so that you have 2 options for flash is incredibly strong. Or getting, Liberator and a Cabbage Manufacturer, whatever assortment you would like. Summoner's Pact goes and gets you a green creature. Tameo Safekeeping is protection. Veil is protection. Worldly Tutor is a creature tutor. So that's basically all of those. We'll hit on the artifact section because there's a decent amount to talk about here. So Agatha's Soul Cauldron lets you spend mana as though we're any color, doesn't really matter. Creatures you control with a +1 counter on them have activated abilities of all creatures exiled with it, and you could tap, eat a card out of a graveyard. If it's a creature, put a +1 counter on a creature you control. So the big thing with this is we can bin Kuldotha's Forge Master. We can eat it, put a +1 counter on something, and now everything that we have that has a +1 counter on it has the ability to go tutor, opens up instant speed win lines, and obviously is incredibly strong. But even getting something like Safekeeper for protection or getting Haywire Might for removal opens up a lot of different niche lines. If you have infinite mana, you could eat Walking Ballista, put a +1 counter on something, create infinite 1/1 counters on it, shoot everybody with Walking Ballista. And then Chrome Dome and Copper Gnomes can have their situations too, where you could bin the Chrome Dome, eat the Chrome Dome, go infinite. It's also just a general good hate piece. If somebody puts something in the graveyard, we could eat it early on. We can cut cards out of a breach deck, or just make sure there's no lands for a Deathrite Shaman, stuff like that. Avarice Totem is 1 colorless artifact. It says 5, exchange control of totem and target non-land permanent. So the big thing with this card is we create a ton of mana in this deck. What you can do is activate totem twice. So you activate it a first time, targeting a tapped food that you control. Hold priority, activate it a second time, switch it with somebody's Rhystic Study. The first one is going to resolve and switch with Rhystic Study, and then the second one's going to resolve and it's going to switch with your tapped food, essentially exchanging control a tapped food for their Rhystic Study. This can be very nice at just stopping people from having certain pieces. It could be nice to steal people's engines and different things like Smothering Tides. It could be used to steal somebody's silence effect. I've only ever really used it one time so far, and it was before going infinite. I just stole the entire board from everybody except for lands, just in case anybody had any kind of shenanigans and stuff like that. Incredibly powerful card. Chromox, you guys know what it does. Clock of Omens goes infinite with Transmutation Font. So the way that this works is you get to you need like Academy Manufacturer out, something like that. You tap it to create a clue, which would create a food, and it would create a treasure. You could then tap 2 of those artifacts to activate Clock of Omen's ability to untap Transmutation Font, and then do it again, and do it again, and again, and again, and again. After you've created infinite mana, you have infinite untaps of all artifacts you control. You can then use Transmutation Font to go search for an artifact over and over and over. It wins the game. It also can have some different situations where you're able to untap something and create something, create situations. So being able to, possibly sneak in a grinding station just to get somebody, or being able to untap a Nuka-Cola vending machine so that way you can create a food token, which is going to start a chain of events happening. The Obviously, Clock of Omens is incredibly powerful. I'm sure if you know anything about cEDH or artifact decks, you already know that. Damping Sphere, 2 colorless. Whenever a land is tapped for 2 or more mana, it produces 1. And each player, basically, it makes every spell cost 1 based on the storm count more. So if it's your second spell or third spell, you're going to have to pay more mana. It's an anti-cradle thing. It's an anti-storm thing. Uh, incredibly powerful stacks piece. By the time we start to do our engines and have everything, the bottom ability does nothing to us, and we don't really care about the top part because most Cabbage Merchant decks aren't Cradle decks, or at least not Cradle focused. I don't play Cradle in mine, but it doesn't really hurt us. Disruptor Flute is 2 colorless flash, enters battlefield, choose a card name, spells with the chosen name cost 3 more to cast. Activated abilities and sources can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. This has the option with Chrome Dome to create interesting situations where you can actually create infinite mana by copying the Academy manufacturer and doing everything. And then you can create infinite disruptor flutes, naming as many cards as you would like. So you can create them naming all the channel abilities, any counter spell that any blue deck can play, any black removal piece or red removal piece. You can make it so nobody can cast any of those and then present your win, just for added protection in case you're worried about anything. Um, Usually, if you're in a situation where you can create infinite mana, it doesn't quite matter. But there are a lot of situations where maybe you want to push but can't just yet, and you have a ton of mana and everything, and this could be a good situation to cast this first, resolves, name an Odawara, use Chrome Dome to create a copy of it. Now you name Beseju, and now you've cut out multiple abilities that would be able to stop you. It also is just very good. Obviously, it's stopping people from going for win lines and stuff like that. Expedition map searches for a land. Grinding station could go infinite. If you have the ability to use Clock of Omens transmutation font, you have infinite artifacts entering that infinitely untaps Grinding Station. You could then tap some of the foods to create mana and then sack them with Grinding Station to mill everybody out. Then you just need Gaia Reach Sanitarium to force them to draw from an empty library, or if it's earlier on in the game, play everything that you want out possible and then pass, and they will not be able to do anything. If you already have infinite mana, you can play Disruptor Flute, Chrome Dome, create infinite flutes, naming every card, pass to them, and they won't be able to do anything in their turn. Clan Ironworks is 4 colorless artifact. It says sacrifice an artifact, create 2 colorless. This is just a piece that enables so much more when you start to pop off. Being able to tap all your foods for mana and then sack all of them for mana just gives you an insane amount of mana. Makes it very hard for you to lose. Lotus Petal, Mana Vault are pretty obvious. I'll talk about Rajmir in a second. Mox Diamond is pretty obvious. Nuka-Cola Vending Machine goes infinite with Peregrine Took because whenever you sacrifice a food, create a tapped treasure. Important to note that the tapped treasure coming in will hold the same effect with any other effects that happen. So if you have Academy Manufactor out and a tapped treasure enters, you will get a tapped food and a tapped clue. So it's important to point out these kind of things, not only so you don't accidentally push in situations where you're going to create infinite tapped things and lose, but it's oftentimes less scary to people when you're able to point out that the things don't come in untapped. Just a little situational thing that can change certain people's opinions about certain scary board states and all that. Sculpting Steel enters as a copy of an artifact, enters a copy of Academy Manufacturer's very strong play. Soul Ring is pretty straightforward. Sphere of Resistance is a good stacks piece that makes it harder for storm decks and different decks like that to pop off. And again, if you have the Chrome Dome, infinite mana, create infinite Sphere of Resistances. Not infinite, but create 100 of them so nobody can cast a spell unless they could pay an additional 100 for them. We talked about transmutation font. Trinisphere. So as long as Trinisphere is untapped, each spell that would be less than 3 costs 3. Just a very strong stacks piece to put down against most decks. Playing it early can slow the game down tremendously. Um, Slowing the game down can be very strong because we need to set up multiple pieces before we're able to actually do much. So if you're able to land a Trinisphere early and then follow up with something like a Cabbage Merchant and then follow up with a Cabbage Manufacturer, people are more likely to want to remove the Trinisphere because it stops all their win lines and everything that they could possibly want to do. At that point, you're already set up. So if they remove it, who cares? Vidalcanori gives all of our spells flash. Notably, if we're drawing our deck and presenting a bunch of things, we could play Liberator and then flash this out to give the rest of our deck flash if we need to. You also can have Liberator out, start a stack battle, and when people go to do certain things, then flash this out later on. And Vexing Bubble stops free spells. Pretty straightforward. Survival of the Fittest can be used to get a creature. And it also, importantly, if you have Agatha's Soul Cauldron out, can be, pay a green, pitch a Kuldotha's Forge Master, go put a creature in your hand, eat the Kuldotha with Agatha's, put a counter on something, win. Wild Growth, put it on a land, get an additional green. Now, Mirage Mirror is an interesting one. It's pay 2. Mirage Mirror becomes a copy of target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land until end of turn. So when you create infinite mana, you're able to get Chrome Dome. You can create infinite copies of Mirage Mirror. Very important that Mirage Mirror is Mirage Mirror before you go to do anything. When you pay the ability of Mirage Mirror until the end of turn, it is no longer Mirage Mirror. You can't activate. But if you have Mirage Mirror out and you have Chrome Dome, you can make infinite mana. You can create infinite copies of Mirage Mirror. That opens up an incredible amount of lines. Obviously, anything on anyone else's board you can then take. That opens up options for infinite mana outlets or infinite damage outlets if you see it somewhere. Being able to turn into a land is an important piece for us because we have a land that deals a damage. So if you have infinite mana, you have infinite Mirage Mirrors, you have infinite of that land, you have infinite damage from there, which I will point that out when we get down there. But even just in general, having Mirage Mirror out opens the option for you to pay 2 to have it a copy of a Smothering Tithe in someone's upkeep so you can get a bunch of treasures, which can trigger Academy Manufacturer. It can be a way to copy a Rhystic Study. That way you could draw a bunch of cards and interact with different things. There's a lot of options for Mirage Mirror. It's a very underrated card in general for Magic, but for us, obviously, if you can create infinite Mirage Mirrors, opens up a lot of lines. So real quick, we'll hit over the lands section and talk about each one briefly. Abstergo Entertainment has the ability to return a historic card from your graveyard to your hand, getting you back something important like Academy Manufacturer, and then it exiles all graveyards, so it's also graveyard hate. We know what Tomb does, we know what Besage does, City of Traders, Crystal Vein. These three are particularly here to help us land that turn 2 Cabbage Merchant. Emergence Zone gives all of our spells flash. Like we said, winning on another person's turn is our goal, so having flash speed is incredibly strong. Fomori's Vault is the most broken card in the deck. This is what you tutor for when you get a land, probably 90% of the time. Obviously, there's situations, but it is tap for a colorless or pay 3, tap, discard a card. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts you control. Put one of those cards in your hand and the rest of the bottom library in a random order. Sometimes you have 20 plus artifacts on the battlefield. So this becomes tap 6 foods, discard a card, look at the top 20 cards of your library, put one into your hand. Obviously, that is incredibly strong. You usually have more than 20. So this almost becomes just a detutor of sorts. It's incredible. It's also a very good response piece. You can't remove my commander because you might need me to go search for something. This is all I got. And if they do force that situation, you could do this to go get a flash enabler and win an instant speed. Gaia Reach Sanitarium is the land I was talking about before. Forces everybody to draw a card and discard a card. So basically, if you're in a really bad situation and you need to get some cards and you need to start doing something, it could be better than a colorless land or another forest, But the big thing is that if you mill everybody out, you can then force everybody to draw from empty library. You also, I suppose, could Mirage Mirror and create infinite copies of it, but I imagine in that situation you're going to deck yourself out. So I don't know. There's probably some situations I'm not quite thinking of, but You guys get what I mean. Gemstone's a land. Hickory Woodlot is a depletion land. Depletion lands are very good when you play them turn 1. Depletion lands are pretty bad later on, but I think it's worth having. Inventor's Fair allows you to search for an artifact. Very strong. We always have more than 3 artifacts in this deck. It's not hard. Okina can buff our commander and is a green source. Plaza of Heroes can be exiled to give a legendary creature you control hexproof and indestructible. So it's green land, colorless land, and protection all in one. Wrath's Edge is the land I was talking about before. It can create a colorless mana, or it can be pay for, tap it, sacrifice a land, deal 1 damage to target creature or player. So if you create infinite of these lands, infinite damage. Shifting Woodlands can become a copy of anything in the graveyard as long as you have Delirium. There's obviously an incredibly large amount of strong pieces that you would want this to become a copy of that would make perfect sense. Even just if somebody destroys your Academy Manufacturer, being able to turn this into Academy Manufacturer can open up a lot of instant speed win lines. Strip Mine destroys target land, just a very strong piece to have. Good utility. Talon Gates can phase something out. Mycosynth Gardens is pay X, tap it. It becomes a copy of target non-token artifact you control, mana value X or less. This becomes a way to instant speed create Academy Manufacturer. Tree of Tales is an artifact land that taps for green. It being an artifact can help with artifact count cards. Things like, I guess Mox Opal's not played in here, but things like Inventor's Fair or Steel Seeker care about artifacts entering. Different things like Forge Master being able to sacrifice 3 artifacts. And it only cost us a green, which is almost the exact same thing as a forest. You know, the only thing that it gets hurt by is like Collector Oof, which, okay. Yavimaya makes everything tap for green, and then Winding Canyons has the bottom ability, pay 2, tap it. Until end of turn, you may play creature cards whenever you could play instances. So it allows you to flash out all your creatures. So that's the majority of the deck. I'll talk quickly about the sideboard and considerations. There's not a ton here. Grinning Totem is a way, if you're able to Mirage Mirror, you can infinitely use Grinning Totem to search every card out of every person's library. So it opens up a lot of instant speed wins. It's a card that I'm considering. And Scrawling Crawler, if Rhystic Study is not banned, I'm putting this into the deck. It's draw hate. And as you can see, I don't have a big considering board, and most of these are pretty straightforward. I'm sure that it's pretty easy to understand. Protection Piece, Loops with Endurance, Springheart can be used to create copies of Academy Manufacturer. Shimmer Mirror is another flash enabler. It was in the deck. I'm testing without it. Protection, or Silence Effect, I guess. Protection does a lot of shenanigans when you have a ton of mana. Draws you cards, gives you protection. You can flash this out at instant speed, so this is a card I'm heavily considering. This turns all your foods into tap 1 to create a green, and it has the bomb ability of pay 7 and buff all of your creatures by the number of foods you control, which is just lethal in a lot of situations. Homeward Path can get you back your commander if you think people are going to steal it, and Treasure Vault is a good way to just create a ton of mana. You know, if you have 20 foods, you have nothing else going on, tap 20 foods, create 10 treasures, and sacrifice this is pretty strong. So far on the deck, I have played in 2 tournaments, and I've played at a couple of events. Really big fan of this deck. It works really well in this meta. If you're looking for a deck that works well against the Rog Ishais and the Rog Sais and those kind of decks, as long as you get your commander out before them, you get a ton of value built up. It can lead to a lot of situations where you can easily push for instant speed wins. So that is all for this deck tech. I'm sure I missed a couple things, but I'm confident I did a pretty good job explaining this deck and why I enjoy it. I'm going to try to put out more videos doing different deck techs, maybe just talking about the meta, my experience. If you made it this far, thank you. I appreciate it. Hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you on the next one.